What kind of books do you write?
Well,
If you could just write the way that you tell me stories from your life, that's what you need to try to do.
Lord knows when I started writing poetry, it was rotten.
The poetry was rotten?
Sure. I was 10, 11, 12 years old.
I am not absolutely dissatisfied with it. I think it is a good idea, but the execution would have been better if I had not been under the influence of TB when I wrote it.
Do you create characters you like?
usually I do, but I don't always.
With my pencil, I've traveled to the moon and back, probably a few times.
We both were writing so much and having such a fine time doing it, we decided that this should keep on.
No, I don't know where it all comes from. And that's the literal, unvarnished truth.
Today's story is titled Wink by Ray Warters. I'm going to help animals become better than they are now, was the response I made to questions about what I could do with my biology degree. So I applied to graduate schools to follow that goal. A North Florida university accepted me. Each new student needs a faculty advisor to supervise him and help him choose classes that further his goals. Working in the advisor's lab gives the student practical experience. Dr. Bluen, a short, chubby man with thick spectacles, agreed to take me under his wing. His lab studied the control of animal growth, identification of genes and proteins involved in animal development. Dr. Bluen's animal model was the guinea pig. Being last in the lab's chain of command, I inherited the menial task of feeding the animals and keeping their cages clean. They shared a large basement room with caged rabbits, chickens, mice, and rats. I handled only the guinea pigs. They are cute, cuddly little creatures. With oversized heads and no tail, they are plump, little balls of white fur, about the size and shape of your clenched fist. They have a pink nose and ears, tiny black eyes, and a pair of buck teeth which might be dangerous in a larger animal. They scurry around with their little legs splayed out to each side, conversing with squeaks and squeals. When you rub their heads, they make a cooing sound reminiscent of a contented pigeon. It's easy to become attached to these cute little beasts. One particular guinea pig caught my eye. I especially liked him. He seemed to like me back. He looked at me with his little black eyes and sort of winked at me. So I named him Wink. Most days, Wink and I spent time playing together on the floor of the animal room. He scooted around as I tried to catch him. The other animal caretakers shook their heads as they watched the newcomer play on the floor with the guinea pig. Dr. Bluen wanted to express growth hormone in the guinea pigs. He explained that his approach would be to insert the growth hormone, GH, gene into a small virus, infect the animal with the virus, and piggyback the expression of the GH protein on top of viral protein expression. It made me proud when Dr. Bluen chose Wink as the first recipient for growth protein expression. I wanted him to be the best guinea pig he could be. He injected Wink with the virus cocktail, and we waited. Dr. Bluen thought it might take anywhere from days to months before we would see any effect. He asked me to watch Wink and notify him if I noticed changes of any kind in Wink's size or behavior. When I went in to feed the animals the next day, Wink had not changed. Within a week, however, he seemed larger and weighed about twice his normal weight. I noticed the weight gain when I lifted him out of his cage for our daily playtime. I doubled the amount of guinea pig pellets in his food trough before I left that day. I informed Dr. Bluen of the change. He said he'd check the animals after teaching. We kept guinea pigs in plastic enclosures, covered by metal tops with ribs that resemble the bars of a cell. The cages are about 18 inches long by 12 inches wide and 9 inches high. The next day, when I arrived to feed the guinea pigs, Wink filled his cage. His enlarged body pressed tight against the top of the container, his white fur sticking out between the metal bars. When he peered up at me with his large, sad eyes, he looked uncomfortable, squirming around as if trying to break free. He seemed to plead with me to rescue him. Now about the size of a mature rabbit, I transferred him to a much larger cage. Again, I mentioned the change to Dr. Bluen, but he said his administrative duties would keep him from visiting the animal facility that day. When Wink had grown to the size of an obese Great Dane, he no longer fit into any cage in the animal room. I had to let him scramble around free on the floor. Since he'd begun to eat the other animals' food, he'd caught the attention of everyone who worked in the animal facility and their supervisors. Uncertain how dangerous a giant guinea pig might be, most animal caretakers stayed on the other side of the room from him or avoided going into the animal room altogether. Word swiftly arrived at the university's administrative building, all the way up to the top. When the university president asked to see him in the animal room, Dr. Bluen finally rearranged his busy schedule to accommodate an unscheduled meeting. Once Dr. Bluen arrived, the president opened the door to the animal room. He took a quick look inside, then recoiled backward, slamming the door. With a look of sheer terror on his face, he glared at Dr. Bluen. "Sweet Mother of God, what have you done?" Dr. Bluen just stared at the floor, shuffled his feet, and mumbled, "My research was designed to answer many important questions about human growth." The university president was not impressed. He told Dr. Bluen to take a leave of absence and banished Wink to the city zoo, where he could grow to his heart's desire. The little girl squealed with pleasure and rushed to the display. She squatted on the floor and pushed her nose up against the floor-to-ceiling glass partition, separating her from a large, snow-white fur ball with piercing black eyes, chewing on cabbage in the middle of a field of wood chips and shredded newspaper. She pointed, looked over her shoulder, and asked, "What's that thing, Gramps?" The white-haired man shuffled over to the glass barrier and looked in. He cocked his head and furrowed his brow. "Can't say I ever saw anything like that before." He edged over to the exhibit explanation board and began to read. His lips moving, he looked up at the animal and back down at the writing a couple of times. "Say, that thing's the monster rodent we've been hearing about. Made in the lab of some professor here at the local university. The only critter like it in the world." Wink became the zoo's star attraction, with receipts at the front gate doubling. I was happy that the public liked Wink, fast becoming a local celebrity. But it concerned me that he might develop PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. You see, the zoo had placed his exhibit too near to the lion house. In nature, the cat is a natural predator of the guinea pig. It was apparent from his continuous screeching that the roaring of the lions made Wink anxious. Then, one night, he disappeared from his enclosure. The newspaper article read that Wink managed to escape from the zoo. The report made him sound like a felon gone on the lam from the federal police. Rumor had it, though, that PETA arranged his escape. Reports found Wink lumbering around the city, feeding on shrubs and low-hanging branches of small trees, his path marked by devastated gardens and large, football-shaped droppings. The city fathers decided that they needed to put him down for the sake of public health and safety. PETA, more sympathetic, enlisting community support for his protection against cruel and unusual punishment by circulating flyers showing his photo. It's surprising how cute and endearing a 400-pound guinea pig can look in a 4x4-inch photograph. The thought of intentionally murdering a cute little guinea pig disgusted North Floridians. The governor thought such an act of animal cruelty might reflect poorly on the state. Wink received a reprieve from the death penalty. On the news today, they stated that Wink had finally stopped growing, having reached the size of a small Asian elephant. I guess there's a natural law involved. It dictates the maximum weight or volume a warm-blooded land animal can reach. It can't grow greater than about 2 to 3 tons. I suppose it has something to do with gravity. The last time I saw Wink, he had migrated south down the Florida peninsula. I decided to drive south to see him one more time before I left the state. Since Dr. Bluen was now persona non grata at the university, he had no laboratory in which I could work. A letter of recommendation from him would be worthless. I didn't think that having been his graduate student would help to advance my career, so I decided to move on and find greener pastures elsewhere. A rumor circulated that Wink relocated to an area west of Lake Okeechobee, so I drove south down US Route 27 looking for him. In an unpopulated area just west of the lake, I noticed a group of cars parked at the side of the highway, their drivers crowded close together along the sandy shoulder of the road. I parked and joined the crowd. Before I saw him, I heard his loud, ear-piercing squeaks and squeals. There, in a palmetto swamp, a vast, unwashed version of the Wink I knew waddled around grazing on swamp cabbage. National Guardsmen supervised Wink and kept the crowd of onlookers at a safe distance. Local authorities must have realized Wink had become a great tourist attraction and decided to tolerate him so long as he brought in tax dollars. Wink recognized me in the crowd, gave me a sad look and a soulful smile. I felt a tug on my heart when he gave me a wink. I waved him a farewell, wished him all the best. I know he wanted the same for me, so I winked back. Thank you all for listening. I have several announcements I'd like you to hear, so stay tuned until the end of this episode. First, I hope you enjoyed the new intro. I compiled sound bites from interviews I watched of some famous authors. In order, they are Stephen King, John Green, Mary Oliver, George Orwell, and Sylvia Plath. If you want to know more about the context of the quotes, message me on Instagram and I'll explain it. Speaking of, as you may have noticed, I skipped last week's episode. I got sick about 2 weeks ago and was under the weather and I lost my voice. You may even hear a difference in my voice this week, as it isn't fully recovered, but at least I'm no longer in pain. I did try to update those that follow my Instagram page, which is really the only point of contact you have unless you want to email me. So if you want to keep updated with the podcast, for example, if I have to cancel or anything like that, as well as see some behind the scenes, go ahead and follow @unpublishednotunknown on Instagram. I'm sure some of you have noticed that in the last episode and this episode, I did not run any ads for Anchor, and I wanted to explain that a bit. This is my first podcast where I've run ads, and I wanted to see if it would make any money and what that kind of looked like, and wanted to explore that a bit. As you may have noticed in the last several, before I stopped it, I had upped the ante and added about 2 ads per episode to see how that would affect anything. And if you want to know the honest truth, I have made, in the course of this podcast, $4.48. And originally I thought if I was going to make a good amount of money, that would at least cover the costs of the equipment that I have, and then maybe even turn it into something else that I would use to give back to this community. And I hadn't figured out what that was yet, but I wasn't making enough money to really have to think about it. And I just want you to know this is not me asking you for money. This is me saying, I never liked asking you guys for money in the form of an ad. Like, I don't really like running ads that much, and I didn't feel that it was an ad that was insanely personal to this community or myself, although I do love Anchor and I still use it. That being said, I didn't like how it interrupted the listening experience. I didn't like having to run an ad in the middle of the show. And what I want to do instead is advertise my own business, that while I didn't have a voice in the last 2 weeks, I've been working really hard to get my podcast editing business up and running. So it's called She Produced It, and you can visit sheproducedit.com for more information. If you have a podcast, or you are looking to start one, or you have friends that are starting one or have one, feel free to send them my way. I would love to work with new people on small podcasts, big ones, it doesn't matter. It's something that I'm really passionate about, and that's the ad that I will be running from here on out. And it'll be at the end of the episode. It won't be interrupting the listening experience, and so I just wanted to explain that a little bit and give you guys some context. I hope that makes sense. I think we'll all be glad that I don't have to run that ad anymore, so enjoy. Also, I have officially claimed the domain name unpublishednotunknown.com, whereas before you might have seen like an HTTPS bio.link/KDK. I no longer use that. You can just go to unpublishednotunknown.com. I have updated some of those links there, so feel free to take a look at them. One of the main things that I added was links where you can leave a review for the podcast, either on Apple if you're using iPhone products, or on Podchaser, which is really good for those using Android. So over the last few weeks, I've really interacted with people on Android and found that if you just create a quick profile on there, you can leave a review on the podcast as a whole or on individual episodes as well. Speaking directly to the authors that I have read, if you want to connect on Podchaser, you can create a profile and reach out to me and I'll list you as the author of your episode. That way, as the podcast grows, you can create your own profile, add links that you want, and that'll just be a great way for you to advertise yourself and connect people even further and even simpler to you and be able to advertise whatever you want. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about that. Also, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel associated with the podcast, you may have noticed that I had not updated it in a long time. I had missed, I'd say, about 5 or 6 different episodes, and those are officially published on the YouTube channel. So if you prefer to listen on YouTube, or it's easier for you, or whatever country you're in, then please feel free to check those out. Everything is up to date, and you can subscribe there as well. It is just audio, so there's no video attached to it except for some of my earlier episodes, but yeah. Also, I've had several people ask if I have any merch coming out related to the podcast, and I don't as of yet, but it is something I'm looking into now that I have the new logo and really like it. So if you're interested in that at all, shoot me a DM on Instagram or email me. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you have any ideas, let me know, and I will get to working on that for you. Also, any links that I've mentioned in this episode will be in the show notes, so feel free to explore around there. I always keep links to the author's website, so feel free to check out their site and any other things that they have me listing there for them. Sometimes I will include their personal websites or their social medias if they request that. So always look down there if you want to connect with these people more. That's a great way to follow them. And again, thank you to the author for allowing me to give voice to your story. It's been a pleasure. All right, that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you next week.